The following is produced by 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content and is sponsored in part by a grant from Paul Mitchell Salon Hair Care.
You know why this water is jumping for joy? Because it's recycled and reused over and over again. Just like most of the water here in Epcot at the Walt Disney World Resort near Orlando, Florida. That's a good idea because if all the world's 325 trillion gallons of water were compressed into this gallon jug, and you poured off what wasn't drinkable because it was either too salty, too frozen, or too polluted, that would leave us with 1 drop to drink. Actually, conserving water isn't just a good idea, it's a necessity. Hello, I'm Ed Begley Jr., and this is Today's Environment. We explore pressing environmental challenges and some of the new ways we can overcome them. Cheers. If this tree becomes an endangered species, we will too. Between 1950 and 1980, 25% of the forested surface of the Earth was destroyed, and the destruction continues today. Some people want to reverse that statistic, and this may help.
Parched Earth, desperate for water, the high desert, barely 12 inches of rainfall annually, and an elevation of 6,000 feet make it one of the most inhospitable environments for vegetation on Earth. The thought of planting a forest on the desert could be considered one step shy of sheer lunacy, but it just might work. Here on Arizona's Mogollon Plateau, some innovative thinking broke the bonds of conventional thought when it became time to solve a liquid waste problem. This paper mill, operated by the Stone Container Corporation, manufactures newsprint and liner board using a large percentage of recyclable products from a renewable resource. It also generates over 14 million gallons of wastewater every day. Until recently, this evaporation pond fed the wastewater, called effluent, back to the blazing sun. But someone thought of a better idea. Why not recycle the water just like they recycle paper? Once treated, the volume of wastewater generated could support a small forest and cropland. The concept of planting crops and trees on the high desert appealed to management, environmental regulators, and other concerned environmental groups. They committed up to 3,000 acres of barren land to this experiment. In the first year, with the assistance of Northern Arizona University, over 100,000 tree seedlings of different varieties were planted, and 85,000 survived. Other plots of land became testing grounds for crops like corn and alfalfa, which will eventually be sold to area ranchers, farmers, and merchants. Even the waste in the wastewater became recyclable. Pulp particles separated out could be used as fertilizer, and the sludge can be burned as fuel to power the plant. Sources at the Stone Container Corporation view this award-winning experiment in desert forestry as just one small part of their environmental stewardship. Recycling old newspapers, corrugated boxes, and sawmill wastes represents an enormous source of fiber to their business. Nearly 65% of the fiber for this paper mill comes from recycled waste. Already, the desert experiment with wastewater irrigation has earned the approval of some of nature's toughest critics, wildlife. Canadian geese and other species flock to this new home in a forbidding land. The thinking that can turn liquid waste into a source of life on the desert breaks the bonds of conventional wisdom, and that sort of innovation may help create an oasis of hope in our environmental wasteland.
You hear a lot about global warming. Want to help? Plant a tree. You'll help reduce the greenhouse effect and we'll all breathe easier. Get involved with today's environment today.
Some of the most progressive environmental solutions are coming from industries that have been with us for a very long time. This next segment explores one. Take a look.
Here today, gone tomorrow. Some energy resources simply cannot be replenished. Others may be with us as long as humans walk the earth. It's our choice. We can sustain the future or send it up in smoke. In 1992, at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, world leaders came together to discuss our options. The UN Director General and the organizer of this event, Maurice Strong, sought commitments that would develop a blueprint to construct a more sustainable, more secure world. 1 year later, he joined Ontario Hydro as their chairman and CEO and set forth a 10-point strategy for sustainable energy development to guide the company's day-to-day activities. This empowered all workers with the challenge to improve the company's already good environmental record. And since the utility supplies power to the entire province of Ontario, a land area about 1/4 the size of the U.S., this program stands to have major global impact. Environmental considerations became part of every decision-making process. The charge to go beyond compliance was seen as a key to future financial prosperity. The utility launched additional new programs to further reduce all types of radioactive wastes, decontaminate PCB-contaminated oil, and advance the technology for alternate renewable energy sources. The concept of sustainable energy development means that we must make decisions today that won't reduce the options for anyone in the future. Part of the sustainable strategy requires that the bottom line reflect not just financial profits or losses, but also environmental costs and gains. Even coal-fired power plants can have a place in a sustainable future. Ontario Hydro installed advanced air scrubbing units to dramatically reduce emissions and recycles the sludge into synthetic gypsum for wallboards. Fly ash, the tons of remaining particles from burnt coal, has been sold for 20 years to the cement industry and is also used as fill for road construction. Innovations like implementing an energy audit and retrofit of almost every home and business in an entire Canadian city to reduce electricity use was undertaken to demonstrate the benefits of energy efficiency initiatives. Doing similar audits and consulting for foreign cities like Prague expands the utility's role as a global pioneer for sustainable development. Pollution respects no borders, and the technology to defeat it and sustain our future shouldn't be restricted by arbitrary boundaries either. Whether you control a major utility or a four-door sedan, we all have an impact on the world we share. And if we can improve the environment within our local community, the benefits will help sustain the entire Earth. In a moment, on today's environment, tough and clever new packaging may reduce waste by 85% and a natural gas alternative to conventional air conditioning. Next.
When this 2-ounce object comes in the mail, nearly a pound of protective cardboard, paper, and plastic comes with it. There must be a better way. Protecting what we ship shouldn't help destroy our planet. Maybe this next segment has a solution.
What a waste. The amount of protective packaging required to ship glass bottles filled with solvents could bring a landfill to its knees. And then, shattered, it all goes to pieces. No one can change the fact that glass breaks. Using glass bottles to store laboratory solvents can often be described as an accident waiting to happen. And when it does, harmful vapors can vent into the air, and cleaning up broken glass wastes time and money. Some laboratories want a more sensible way to store the solvents they use, and this NowPak, designed by Now Technologies for Burdick and Jackson, may be one good solution. A tough plastic outer layer prevents breakage and even functions as a protective shipping container. An inner liner, made of an inert PTFE polymer, or Teflon, holds the solvent. Designers tortured this container system to check it for durability under the toughest conditions. Shock tests, vibration tests, and pressure tests can all help to reduce accidents that can paralyze a working lab. Several different dispensing options minimize vapors escaping into the lab and maximize the user's flexibility. When the solvent runs out, the overpack can be recycled as number 2 HDPE and/or shipped back and reused. No shipping boxes or protective packaging required. When empty, glass bottles must be thrown out or recycled. That can waste time in handling and money for disposal. The NowPak Teflon inner liners can also be returned to the supplier, or if disposed of, they amount to only 8 ounces of waste. Sources at Burdick and Jackson claim their system can reduce waste by 85% when compared to the protective packaging and glass used for the same amount of solvent in brown bottles. They cite their sealed dispensing system as a means of ensuring product quality and eliminating impurities from compromising the solutions. A reusable shipping container that protects its contents while it reduces waste could improve worker health and safety and preserve precious landfill space. It just may be possible that by successfully shielding their solvents, these state-of-the-art packages might help us defend our planet.
Almost half of the over 150 million tons of waste Americans throw out every year is recyclable. Think about it. Most of your trash isn't even trash. Recycle and get involved with today's environment today.
When the temperature goes up, the ozone layer goes down. And the U.S. leaky air conditioners make up the single largest source of CFC emissions released to the atmosphere. Innovations in air conditioning, like this unit here at the Land Pavilion, can help us beat the heat and not lose the planet. This next segment explores that further.
Dancing with the devil. That may describe our love affair with the comforts from current air conditioners. While they may make us feel cool and sometimes comfortable, they gobble non-renewable energy from emission-producing power plants. And their refrigerants spew ozone-eating chlorine into our atmosphere. Since CFCs will no longer be produced in significant quantities after 1995, great change appears on the horizon for space conditioning. Future systems must balance our comfort with the Earth's survival. One promising alternative may be cooling with natural gas. The low demand for gas in the summertime makes it a natural alternative to electricity, which soars to its peak demand when it gets hot outside. It may not sound logical, but this fuel used primarily for heating may be just as good at cooling. It can literally turn fire to ice. Currently, the American Gas Cooling Center helps coordinate the technology, the energy, and the government policy necessary to advance the use of natural gas cooling. They cite 3 different designs that capitalize on this cleaner burning energy and use it to control indoor atmospheres. Absorption cooling and heating systems like this one being sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy and tested here at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory rely on non-CFC refrigerants and heat exchangers to cool the air. In these systems, ammonia absorbs heat from the air and then mixes in solution with water, which becomes the key to the thermal transfer. Air conditioning units with natural gas-driven engines operate very much like electrical air conditioners and can use ozone-friendly refrigerants. The third system, desiccant dehumidification and cooling, cools with no refrigerants whatsoever. You know the saying, it's not the heat, it's the humidity. That's the difference between an oppressive 95-degree scorcher in Florida and a comfortable afternoon in Phoenix. Desiccants absorb moisture. By channeling the airstream through a honeycombed wheel coated with desiccant material, the humidity gets pulled out of the air. So the big question is, can we afford to make the switch from conventional systems to these new technologies? The developers, manufacturers, and the federal government all believe that these new technologies must be adopted, and any higher purchase price will quickly be saved in energy and environmental cost savings. Sources at the American Gas Cooling Center note that natural gas cooling systems continue to become more available to residential users every day. If we can keep cool on a hot summer day without burning up our resources, our atmosphere, or our pocketbooks, well, the entire Earth will be a little more comfortable. New technologies detect petroleum hydrocarbons before they contaminate, plus a new idea that eliminates the nightmare in the cotton fields. Next on Today's Environment.
They say an ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure, and that's especially true in today's environment. Detecting a small problem early can prevent it from becoming a big one. This next segment explores a new way to do just that.
It starts with a leak. Then the dam breaks and the nightmare begins. In a petroleum storage tank, a broken seam or tiny hole that costs pennies to fix can open and spill a river of contaminants that not even a super fund can pay for. In fact, no one on Earth can afford to wait until accidents happen before reacting anymore. New technology like this PetroSense analyzer from FCI Environmental aims at stopping accidents before they happen. This sensing device keeps a constant vigil for petroleum leaks in above-ground and underground storage tanks. An alarm can instantly alert technicians if it detects petroleum hydrocarbons in the soil, air, or water. The presence of these hydrocarbons indicates a leak or some spillage associated with the storage tank. High technology combines fiber optic chemical sensors with digital electronics and an advanced microprocessor to make this device able to detect leaks below the EPA mandated level.
Early detection can mean an end to a leak before it becomes a problem and contaminates the soil, the air, and groundwater.
At the tank's location, anywhere from 1 to 16 probes get installed. Engineers at FCI Environmental designed these sensors so they can be precisely calibrated to identify a leak on site immediately. Portable units like this PHA 100 with probes for detecting hydrocarbons in water expand the capabilities of detecting pollution in the field. Samples need not go back to a lab for a time-consuming analysis. They can be used to instantly sample for hydrocarbons in many different environments and often aid in long-term monitoring of remediation sites. They can detect a small change in conditions that may indicate an emerging problem. Currently, over 2 million underground storage tanks and 700,000 above-ground tanks store gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel.
The EPA estimates that as many as 30% of underground storage tanks leak and contaminate the soil, air, and water around them, and that 85% of all above-ground storage tanks like these have been reported to cause some level of contamination.
If we can detect these problems before they become catastrophes, we may be able to avoid serious harm to both people and the planet. In a world where oil spills and tanks leak, a device that can sense the presence of danger may help us all prevent the arrival of disaster.
Controlling unwanted plant growth in agriculture can be as difficult as eliminating pests, and herbicides can be just as environmentally harmful as pesticides. So how do we kill the weeds and keep the crops? Here's one idea.
Killer weeds, a nuisance in your garden, a nightmare in a cotton field. Every year they create a chokehold of devastation on cotton fields in excess of $600 million. By comparison, the boll weevil's annual cotton feast eats up only half of that amount. The combined damage of insects and weeds could bring King Cotton to his knees.
In the past, an intense chemical warfare against these pests appeared to be the only way to fight back. Unfortunately, the surrounding environment bore the brunt of this barrage of insecticides and herbicides.
But now, while integrated pest management techniques put the boll weevil on retreat, the war against weeds goes high-tech. The solution to keep the cotton gin humming may lie in the cotton gene. This healthy cotton boll comes from a genetically engineered seed developed by Calgene Incorporated. These high-tech cotton varieties may provide the answer to the agricultural dilemma: how do you kill the weeds and not the cotton? Genetic researchers implanted a special gene resistant to the herbicide bromoxynil into the seeds. So while the herbicide kills the weeds, this BXN cotton can thrive. With this gene splicing innovation, the environment should stand to profit as much as the cotton growers. The specific herbicide, bucktrill, attacks weeds once they appear and breaks down in the soil within 2 weeks or less. It's only used at rates of approximately 4 to 8 ounces per acre.
Current efforts rely on several different herbicides. Many of these have to be applied before weeds even appear, and they're used at rates of from 1 to 2 pounds of active ingredient per acre.
At times, they literally treat fields more intensely than is needed. When used later, they can damage the cotton, reducing yields and quality, and often require even more late-season chemical treatments. Calgene sources point to 5 years of field trials with their BXN cotton and predict herbicide use can be cut by as much as 50% or more. Reduced spraying with a less environmentally persistent chemical could dramatically increase returns on cotton while the surrounding land revives. Cotton growers spend about $100 million per year on seed and 6 times that amount on agricultural chemicals. A seed that dramatically cuts down on these inputs can make the earth and their bottom line a little greener. Company researchers are developing cottons that combine herbicide and Bt insect resistance to further reduce our reliance on the intense usage of pesticides. And if a genetic enhancement can help rescue an environment choking in a bed of weeds, we may find our planet back in tall cotton.
It's easy to blame the big corporations for being big polluters, but consider this. There are over 65 million households in the U.S. loaded with turpentine, bleach, and many other toxic time bombs that often get poured down a sink or toilet. It's a big multiplier, and the combined pollution adds up fast. Please, dispose of your toxics responsibly. I hope this show from Epcot at the Walt Disney World Resort gave you some good ideas about some bad problems. Join us again next time as we explore more environmental solutions on Today's Environment.
The preceding program was sponsored in part by a grant from Paul Mitchell Salon Hair Care. This has been a presentation of 5 Star Productions USA.
It's easy to blame the big corporations for being big polluters, but consider this. There are over 65 million households in the U.S. loaded with turpentine, bleach, and many other toxic time bombs that often get poured down a sink or toilet. It's a big multiplier, and the combined pollution adds up fast. Please, dispose of your toxics responsibly. I hope this show from Epcot at the Walt Disney World Resort gave you some good ideas about some bad problems. Join us again next time as we explore more environmental solutions on Today's Environment.
If you know of any interesting environmental success stories, call us at 407-997-9800. This has been a presentation of 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content.